Welcome to Garvey's Ghost TV. This is January 12th, 2020, and I'm wearing all this green because the African soccer is going on. Go Super Eagles! So that's why I got all the green on. I'm going to try to cover a lot of stuff today, so I might talk fast. I'm also recording this to see if I can get it up to BitChute tonight, and in case YouTube gets funny, because I'm going to get into some stuff. Speaking of YouTube and BitChute, this video will be on BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble by tomorrow. And yeah, you can watch it there if you don't watch it here. And you can Zell me. There. Okay. Anyway, let's get, since I started with Go Super Eagles, I'm going to talk about this first thing in Africa, because I thought this was funny when I saw it. Chinese man made chief in Africa. Now, see, I didn't see that coming, though. Chinese are everywhere, everywhere in Africa. In fact, I read a story that somewhere in the Congo, the Chinese were, I guess, building roads or something there. And Chinese nationals were there, and they were selling chickens in the market. And the locals were mad because the Chinese were selling more chicken than the locals. And I got a question. How do Chinese sell more chickens in Africa than Africans sell chickens in Africa? I mean, really? So anyway, Chinese are the new colonizers. They're just not taking people out, but they're taking a whole lot of other stuff. But, too many black folk in America just stuck on white folk. White folk are the sun, moon, and stars to most black folk. That's all they can see. And they can't see the colonization coming from the east. So, just an example. Chinese man made chief. There you have it. And now on to the more serious thing. First up, we're going to talk about the effectiveness of certain vaccines. And I'm going to go over a couple of papers. This first one here is from the Brownstone Institute by Vinay Prasad. I think I've seen this guy on YouTube, and he's a doctor. I am not a doctor. I just read a lot. And I'm going to share this because now that Walensky is on record, so everybody knows, where she's talking about transmission and the effectiveness of the vaccines, and we're seeing Omicron all over the place. So we can look at some of the data that's behind this. So here's what he shows here is a Kaiser Southern California. This is a paper, a graphic from the paper, and the blue line is Delta, and the reddish line is Omicron. And basically it shows a zero effectiveness after 181 days. Zero. It is 15% effective after 90 to 180 days. So let's call that 6 months. 15%. And it starts at 30%, 14 to 90 days. Now, for those of you not unfamiliar with how these graphs work, these are the confidence intervals. So it could be as high as what? That would be 50, and could be as low as 5, right? And that's their confidence interval. So you see this 90 days, the confidence interval is 0 at the bottom. So one could argue that after 90 days, the 2-dose of mRNA 1273 against Omicron is 0. That's not medical misinformation. This is from a study. I'm not saying that. Just reading the paper. We go further. He goes and shows the 3-dose mRNA 127 against Omicron and Delta. Again, blue is Delta. And he claims that there is a on or after October 21st of last year and on or prior to October 20th, 2020. And you see up here that the mRNA 1273 is 93% effective with a lower bound of about 81. And yet for Omicron, which is now the prevalent variant, it went from 64 to 49 with a confidence interval. I mean, this is huge. I mean, that's huge. Anyway, of 10. So that booster is less, well, between 64 and just under 50% effectiveness. That's according to that particular paper. Then we looked at the province of Ontario, and they'll see that there's this day since second dose, day since third dose, and effectiveness against Omicron and Delta, again, for 2 doses. And you see Delta is the big black ones up here. Notice the small confidence intervals was very tight. And Omicron, I mean, down here at minus 100. Since the days since third dose, and it pops up to about 60% with the confidence interval go at the low end at 10%. So you see this whole Omicron, it dips down, right? It dips down and then it comes up, and I'm just reading the paper. So the other one here is a probability. This is a report out of Denmark, same article, but this is Denmark. Probability of a household contact getting sick for Omicron. So for the unvaccinated, it was 29%. 2 doses, it went up after 2 doses. And then the third dose went 25%. I mean, to me, this is same ballpark, but when you're using millions of people, those 5% can be huge numbers of people. So I'm not going to just be poo-poo all about it, but still, this 32% should be eye-opening. And since we saw that this popped up in terms of ineffectiveness against Omicron from the 2, we can expect the 3 to act like the 2 when the 4 comes. Yeah, the 2, actually the 3, actually the 2 when the 4, then it will be like 3. Right. So, yeah. So, but yeah, this is the guy. He's on YouTube. And so we just need to see that. But he says draconian avoidance of Omicron is not tenable. And I knew this. And we've known this for a while. But he's a doctor. I'm just some dude on YouTube. So that's one thing. the next thing I want to get into is, before I do that, let's watch this particular video. Yeah. Let's do that. So this guy, it's about 4 minutes, should be at the 4 minutes. Let's see. Okay, so watch this guy. All right. Oh, I don't think it's giving you the audio. We refreshed the page. We're having technical difficulties. Now, I want to make sure you see this and hear it. Here
CEO Albert Bourla speaking in a recent interview to Yahoo Finance.
And we know that the 2 doses of the vaccine offer very limited protection, if any. The 3 doses with a booster, they offer reasonable protection against hospitalization and deaths. Against deaths, I think very good. And less protection. And we know that
to authority.
Here we go.
The government
hear it now.
only has the amount of power that we the people permit them to have. Without our consent, it all goes away.
If any, the 3 doses with a booster, they offer reasonable protection against hospitalization and deaths. Against deaths, I think very good. And less protection against infection. Now, we are working on a new version of our vaccine.
Okay, so it's important to see it. That's the CEO of Pfizer admitting that it doesn't really do anything about infection. And he put the chart there that we've all seen. Is it still? Yeah, there we go. Right? So we just skip back just a little, right? There's a little big peak all the way on the right. And he's admitting that, this is covered up. I'm sorry about that. That's where my face is. So this is the Omicron peak over here. And this guy is the CEO of Pfizer. And he's admitting that it doesn't prevent infection. It does severe disease, which we're not disputing, but it doesn't keep infections. So I want to keep that in mind, because when the FDA gave their approval, part of the rule is that the drug has to reach a certain threshold. And if it doesn't, that authorization by law is supposed to be pulled. So since the CEO of Pfizer is admitting this, and he admitted it in public, because a lot of this video has been going around. They've been trying to suppress it, but it's been going around. We have questions for the FDA, part of what they're supposed to do when a drug doesn't do what they told it would do. So that's one important thing to keep in mind. Now, the next thing I want to get to is this other paper here. See if you can see it. The predominance of antibody-resistant SARS-CoV-2 variants in vaccine breakthrough cases from San Francisco Bay Area. Now, this was just published. You'll see it's in Nature Microbiology 2022. Now, one of the reasons why I'm bringing this stuff up is the public generally does not look at academic papers. And I want to make sure that I can bring this to the public and explain what the people behind the curtains know. and what they're not telling you. So this is from this year. And if we go through here, their main objections, so first thing, they did this study from February 1st to June 30th of 2021. So this is pre-Omicron. This is very important to remember, because if they include Omicron, they would see something completely different than what they reported. But even so, this is still significant. So, here's one of the in the abstract. Symptomatic vaccine breakthrough infections had comparable viral loads, whereas asymptomatic breakthrough infection had decreased viral loads compared with the infections in unvaccinated individuals. Here it is. Differences in viral loads were non-significant between unvaccinated and fully vaccinated cases overall, and according to lineage. It was in symptomatic where there were symptomatic vaccine breakthroughs had comparable viral loads. So if generally they're saying that whether you were vaccinated or not, you had similar viral loads. So when they put the thing in your nose or put the thing in your throat, similar viral loads, whether you were vaccinated or not. And again, YouTube, don't get mad at me. This is Nature Microbiology 2022. I'm just reading the paper. Now, there's a bunch of pretty graphs that I'm not going to get into, but the results were interesting because they were talking about the difference. So you see the beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, iota. So they were looking at those, and I bet most of those you haven't even heard of. But the important part here, among unvaccinated cases, most viruses consisted of non-resistant variants. That is the alpha, I believe the delta, based on hospital and community tested. In contrast, the vaccinated cases for which the proportions of non-resistant variants fell to 34 and 20% respectively. Variant distribution in unvaccinated cases were predominantly by alpha and epsilon cases, whereas infections by gamma and delta variants, which caused more pronounced decrease in AB neutralization than other VOCs, were increased in fully vaccinated breakthrough infections. Excuse me. So I want to get to this one here. Overall, fully vaccinated cases were significantly more likely than unvaccinated cases to be infected by resistant variants, 77% versus 47%. Now this is key, because remember, they said in this paper that they were studying only from February 1st to June 30th of 2021. This is pre-Omicron. And they noticed from June 2021 that the vaccinated cases had more resistant variants than those of the unvaccinated. So, all those boosters using the same tech don't respond to the escape variants. Kind of makes you look at these new booster rules all over the place. So if this is known by others. And remember, before these papers come out, they go through a peer review process. So multiple people in high places have seen this paper, I would say for at least 3 months. At a minimum, 3 months. And people are still going for this booster stuff. So that was something that was very interesting and relevant to this case. So we're going to skip from the heavy technical stuff to a discussion about things that will make you more vulnerable to disease in general. And maybe explain why we see some of because remember, Walensky admitted that people with certain comorbidities, 4 or more, I guess he said, were having severe cases. So we should look into that. So here's an article from the New York Post. Spike in autoimmune diseases blamed on fast food. I don't really eat fast food that often, so I'm not worried about that. But the important part is to read this. Right? Disorders of the immune system are on the rise everywhere thanks to the global popularity of the so-called Western diet. Notice, disorders of the immune system. So, if we go back and look at COVID, the thing that takes people out with COVID is the immune response, the cytokine storm, which is an extreme inflammatory response that takes you out. Usually, by the time that response happens, the virus has done its thing already and is usually gone. You'll see the viral load charts. They'll show it peaks very early, the first 1 to 14 days, and then it just drops. But what happens, you have all these particles of virus, and the body goes, oh my goodness, we're infected. And then you have the cytokine storm. And in certain people, this is worse than others. Why? Well, let's talk about inflammatory system. So, autoimmune diseases, including type 1 diabetes, MS, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis, have spiked in recent decades, according to scientists. Right? So notice, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Okay? That means it attacks the body. Let me get down to that. Go down here. So, autoimmune diseases, here we are for here. Autoimmune diseases arise out of the immune system's inability to differentiate invading organisms from local tissues, prompting immune defenses to attack healthy cells too. Inflammation due to repeated immune responses can cause long-term damage to the affected organs and tissues. So again, we know that people who are obese, have diabetes, experience severe COVID disease. This could be the underlying explanation. They are likely to be diabetic, type 2. That means it's adult onset due to diet, most likely. And that this autoimmune disease causes inflammation, which is what kills you in COVID severe cases. which attacks affected organs, even the healthy ones, and tissues. So this is very important when a lot of us were saying, hey, people who are obese and have these certain diseases may want to check themselves and change their lifestyle because they may have a huge problem very soon. So let's get back into that, because here I was in August of 2021 with a post, an epidemic of the comorbid. And we'll see that there's a chart, characteristics of hospitalized COVID cases 16 plus by vaccination status. And so they have unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, fully vaccinated. And then down here, they have comorbidities. And you see unvaccinated with no comorbidities were 19% versus 8%. And you'd say, oh, okay, there's a decrease. So it's effective for people with no comorbidities. But then you see vaccinated, unvaccinated people with 3+ comorbidities were 32% of the unvaccinated. Yet, if you were vaccinated or fully vaccinated as of August 5th, 2021, and you had 3+ comorbidities, you represented 48% of cases. If you had diabetes, you were and fully vaccinated, you were 51% of cases. You had high blood pressure, 71%. So it's very clear from this chart that we knew from at least August that certain comorbidities basically guaranteed that you were going to have a problem, even if you took. Right? So that's August. But that's not the first time. Here, we have a paper from April 22nd, 2020. And in this paper, April 2020, April 22nd, that was about 1 month after the lockdowns were done in the United States. And this is JAMA. So YouTube, don't get mad at me. I'm reading the paper. Now, I posted this paper to my blog when this came out. And what I want to show you is this piece over here. Oops. So they were going through the different types of people. So race, no race, race, the total number was 5,441. Of their study, there were 1,200 African Americans, 473 Asians, 2,100 whites, and other multiracial 1,500. I'm not interested in the racial makeup, but what was interesting here was people with comorbidities, 5,700. The largest group were those with hypertension, 3,000. You had congestive heart failure, coronary heart disease, and the hypertension is interesting because when you roll down here, we go metabolic disease, obesity, BMI greater than or equal to 30, 1,737 or 41%. And the number was 4,170 out of that 5,700 group. Morbid obesity, BMI greater than 35, right? So they were basically, all these people were 471. So you have 3,000 of these people had metabolic disease. Notice not being a smoker, a non-smoker didn't help too much. And then you roll down here for all the people, if you had no comorbidities, there were 350. You had one, it's 359. And arguably, a lot of people have one problem. That's not uncommon when you're looking at an age group, 55 or 50 and up. They're going to have something. It's going to be there. I probably got something that I don't know yet. Okay. But when it goes to greater than 1, so that's minimum of 2, right? Minimum of 2. You have almost 5,000 or 88%. That's percent, right? Make sure I go there. Right. Percent. 88% of the people with these severe outcomes had at least 2 comorbidities. Now let's think about that. 90%, nearly 90%, back in April of 2020, almost 90% were people who had serious health problems, at least 2. And Krispy Kreme's giving out donuts. So think about this. If we've known that having at least 2 major comorbidities gave you a 90% chance of having a bad outcome in April of 2020, how come we had the response that we did? Why did we lock down gyms? Why did we leave the KFCs, the Wendy's, and the McDonald's open? Why did we applaud Krispy Kreme giving out donuts for vaccinations? You would think that if you were following the science, you'd be telling people to lose weight quick, fast, and in a hurry. But that's not what happened. So that's something we should think about, that they knew this back in 2020. And just this week, or was it last week? Yeah, just last week, they came around to admitting it when we knew this already. So we have those things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, because this is a very important thing, is we're going to talk about the heart. Right, the heart. Because sometimes there are medications given to people that have side effects that affect the heart. Now, I'm not going to say what they are. I'm not going to say. We're just going to discuss the heart. Now, sometimes you will hear this reporting going on saying about myocarditis and pericarditis, and I'll tell you the truth, I had no idea what they were talking about. I know itis means is an inflammation, and we're not talking about sleeping after eating. We know that there's inflammation, that's itis, so you have tendinitis and appendicitis. And every time you see itis, that means there's an inflammation. But I don't think the public really understands the gravity of heart inflammation. So let's look at the heart and what these things are. So what is myocarditis? And by extension, what is pericarditis? So just to be clear, if you're looking at this chart, the outside layer is the pericardial cavity. And it's a sac that the heart sits in. Like, so your chest, your heart's kind of like here, right? And it sits here and it's surrounded by a sac, and the lungs are here. It kind of separates the heart from the lungs. And that's why you need fat. Like having fat, it's how your organs are separated, and it keeps them from friction, being rubbing against each other, friction, which is bad. Okay, just try rubbing your arm. Imagine every time your heart beating is rubbing up against the lungs, and that could be bad. So you have this sac here, holds it in, keeps it separated. Okay, so pericarditis is when that sac gets inflamed and it grows. Now that puts pressure on the lungs push pressure on the heart, and you have issues. I don't think you want that. If you've ever had inflammation, whether it's just your gut, can you imagine what that's like for your heart? I mean, you only got one heart. If that stops, you're done, right? So that's pericarditis. That's the external, the sac that holds the heart in, okay? Surrounds the heart. Myocarditis is inflammation of the myocardium. And that's the part here. So between the outer white and the inner ventricles, and the ventricles that are left and right on this picture, which have the lines coming through it, right? So between that is the myocardium. That's the main muscle that boop, 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 boop. So if that gets inflamed, number one, it reduces the size of the cavity where the blood gets stored to get pushed to the next, whether it's the aorta or the other, I forgot what the other one's called. It goes back to the lungs so you can get rid of carbon dioxide. So imagine that being inflamed. Imagine damaging that. That's works, right? If you're like me, when you're sleeping, my resting heart rate's about 50. It can go down to about 43 because I am extremely fit. And I'm not bragging, I'm just saying I'm extremely fit. But so 43 beats per minute. Now imagine you are struggling you're elderly and your max heart rate is maybe 150. And you walk up a flight of stairs and you hit your max heart rate, but your heart's inflamed because of something you took. Or you're a younger person and you run around all the time near max heart rate, but you took something that inflamed the heart. So you're getting less oxygen, less gas exchange, and because the heart is damaged, think of it this way. You ever got a cramp when you're walking? Your muscles are... So imagine your heart's damaged because of something you took. And it's so aggravated, it just Would you risk taking that? I'm just asking a question. So what did they say? All right. Inflammation of the cardium layer, which is the middle layer of the heart. So they're explaining what myo means heart. Carditis means inflammation. It's really the itis part. Okay. And the myocardium muscle contracts in order to pump blood throughout the body. So you would think, I don't know about you, but for me, I take the heart muscle real seriously, because if it gets damaged and stops working, I'm dead. I'm just saying. Right? Okay. And one of the things they'll say, the most significant long-term complication associated with myocarditis is chronic heart failure. Myocarditis can cause blood flow to be reduced in certain parts of the body, may lead to blood clots developing in the heart, and can trigger a stroke or heart attack. I'm just saying, there are certain products being pushed out there where this is a known side effect. I'm not going to name the product, but I'm just saying. And you should be informed. It's called informed consent. And if you don't understand what this risk actually entails, you shouldn't consent. And I'll add that the risk is every time you take any one of those products. So it's not you took it, you dodged the bullet, you dodged it. It's every time you take that risk. How many times are you going to take that risk each year? I mean, I can see someone deciding to take that risk once, but so I just wanted to make sure I informed everybody as to what myocarditis and pericarditis actually is, so you can be informed about what you're being asked to partake in. That's very important. So that is the medical part of this show. And again, I am not a doctor. I am not prescribing anything. I am just giving you information that is publicly available. You should talk to your doctor. Now, going with the theme of damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead. So we have all this, Walensky admitting that there's 4 comorbidities that are responsible for most of the hospitalizations and severe cases. We have the CEO of Pfizer admitting publicly that his product does not stop transmission and is at best a therapeutic. He said it. So we're just repeating what he said. And seeing how Omicron has gone through the population and will probably get everybody. That's my guess. Almost everybody's going to get touched by it. Then you would think that a rational public service agent would say, hey, you know what? What we're doing is not working. Perhaps we should chill the F out. Nope. Damn the torpedoes. Full speed ahead. Here goes IKEA. IKEA says it will cut sick pay for the unvaccinated. Shame on you, IKEA. Now, mind you, I just showed the reports that show that regardless of vaccination status, Omicron will come and get you. And then you're going to pick out a group that is no more or no less susceptible, and you're going to punish them by taking away a benefit. Shame on you, IKEA. But they're not alone. Here is the city or province of Quebec. Quebec to impose significant financial penalty against people who refuse to get vaccinated. I mean, it's not like they could have a good reason not to want to. You know, they may not be obese or have diabetes or other autoimmune diseases. Heck, they may have already had COVID. And yet, here's the government talking about we're going to make a significant financial penalty against those who refuse it. See, that's what I said in this last one. These people are not concerned about your health. These people are abusers. They're the type that they would beat. Why are you making me beat you? That's what they are. And they should be ashamed of themselves. Right? And listen to this guy. The premier made the announcement Tuesday afternoon describing the measure as a health care contribution. Now, we pay taxes, and then we pay insurance, and then we have a copay on top of that, right? That's our health care contribution, especially people like me who barely use it because I take care of myself and I've been lucky to not have some disease to spring up. And that's what's wrong with these people. They think, you're just extra. That's what we paid our taxes for. Now is when you're supposed to provide the services we paid for. So the province is consulting with the Minister of Finance, but Legault said 50 or 100 is not significant. Now, I can say there are people who getting hit with $100 would be quite significant. Tells you what world he lives in. The tax will apply to all adults in Quebec who refuse to get their first dose in the next few weeks. The premier said the unvaccinated will have to have a bill to pay. Mind you, you may have never gone to the hospital if you had COVID, right? You may have made other arrangements, never had to go see anybody. And yet they're going to make you pay for a service you didn't partake in. Or maybe you pay for private nurse or doctor to give you early treatment, and therefore you didn't use the public services, but they're going to fine you. I mean, these people got gall. Because there are consequences on our healthcare network, and it's not up to all Quebecers to pay to this. Well, actually it is. That's why we pay taxes. So if you all are of the opinion that we can have the stuff we pay for through taxes removed from us, we were denied service, then we need to ask questions about whether we should be paying that much tax. That should come up. Someone in Canada needs to say this. If we're being denied access to all these public services which we pay for, then we shouldn't be paying for them. That sounds fair. So I'm just not gonna finish reading all this stuff. But that's where these people are. And there is one other, this one. Ronald McDonald House. And I had actually forgotten about them. Up here, we see a lot of St. Jude for children's cancer. So Ronald McDonald's house was out of sight. But Ronald McDonald House is going to kick out a child cancer victim from their house. Let me just read this thing, because the young Kelowna family says being evicted from a Ronald McDonald House in Vancouver, where their 4-year-old son is fighting leukemia because they don't have COVID shots. And this was the eviction notice. Beginning January 17, 2022, everyone 5 years or older who are working, staying, or visiting our facilities, blah, 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 must show proof of full vaccination, 2 doses, in addition to completing our existing screening, unless an accommodation has been sought and has been explicitly approved and granted by Ronald McDonald House Charities in writing. Now, I just finished showing you that it is known that the CEO of Pfizer itself says these shots are not effective in stopping the transmission of the current dominant strain, Omicron. And it has decreasing effectiveness against Delta. That's their words. They said it. And yet you have these organizations, full steam ahead, damn the Torpedoes. And they're going to evict a family with a 4-year-old. It just doesn't make sense. This is theater. This is malicious. It's sad. It's sad. And I hope, I know there's going to be people who are good with that. I saw the thread with this announcement and the number of people who were just like, yeah, that's right. Do that to protect your people. Even though the data's out there. All they talk about, hey, protect the dead, protect. So Ronald McDonald House is going to find out that a lot of the people who they thought were going to donate, their donations about to go, woo, that torpedo, woo, boom. So they just know. They just thought, we're in Canada, no one's going to notice. This is going to affect Ronald McDonald houses across North America. Trust me on this one. They're going to find out. So, and last thing I heard is that this family, a GoFundMe was raised, and they have nearly 6 figures in that GoFundMe. So apparently they're going to be all right despite Ronald McDonald House. And think about it, they could start their own charity and just knock Ronald McDonald House out. But those people should be totally ashamed of themselves. But I'm not surprised, because there's a lot of this stuff still going around, even though the narrative is shifting. Speaking of narrative, going off of COVID, I know you're tired of hearing that. The other things that we're seeing are these prices going through the roof. And there's this report, share that here. Shoppers astounded by the thinning grocery store supplies. It's just empty shelves. Now, I noticed that Saturday, went to the supermarket, and the cold flu aisle was empty. And it wasn't like that in March of 2020. So, A, there must be a lot of people who got sick. And B, there must not be a lot of stock. I have noticed that the meat section is quite bare. I've been stocking up for the whole year, so I have enough, but things can get worse. And if you look at some of these pictures here, I mean, that's one, but this is some Soviet Union breadline type stuff. Really. I've never seen anything like this in the United States. Ever. I don't even know if it was like that in the Depression. Of course, I'm not old enough to know about that. But I've never seen anything like this. Now, this store is in Washington, D.C. Now, I have a theory about Washington, D.C. Here's some more pictures. Empty. It's just bad. But I have a theory about DC. See, a lot of these truckers are going to be affected by this federal mandate. And I'm hearing rumblings that they might decide not to deliver to certain states and certain areas in the United States. I don't know about Canada. But I don't think a lot of the blue state like cities really understand how this works, because a lot of them sit in their apartments, they're doing their remote work, and they don't get outside, and they have people deliver stuff to them. So they don't see the stores. And they're going to find out that concrete doesn't grow food. The cows don't graze on concrete, nor do chickens. And for the vegans out there, you can't grow vegetables on concrete. And guess what? It takes months for stuff to grow. And when those trucks decide, if they decide to stop delivering to where you all live, y'all gonna find out who you ticked off and the consequences. See, because if they live near a farm, they can get a farmer to sell them meat, milk, eggs, fruit. They can get that stuff. People in the country, those rules in flyover country, those people, they got food growing on their property. They don't need a supermarket push come to shove. They got the animals. Make sure they get pregnant, make a new one, slaughter, repeat. Chickens, take the eggs, let some of them hatch, the rest of them, you eat. Cow gives milk. As long as it gets pregnant, it's going to give milk. The sheep, they give wool. You got land, plant those broccolis and apples and the apple tree. Well, that's a tree. But carrots and potatoes, peppers, and then you store up. They're going to eat. May not have money, but they're going to eat. And they got guns, so they can go hunt. You can't hunt in New York City. There's no game if we're not including the rats. So what are you going to do if the truckers decide we're not going for it and we're going to starve you out of your blue cities until you learn the lesson and stop being the way you're being? So this whole empty shelf thing, y'all keep messing around, y'all gonna find out. Y'all gonna find out hard. And all you politicians enabling these bad choices by mayors like Eric Adams and that crazy chick in Chicago, and keep that up. Newsom, keep that up. Because people can remember who made the choices that led to the bare things. When you're running for office and you got to explain why you back these policies, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Don't want to be you. But anyway, that's all for Garvey's Ghost TV, January 12th, 2022. Go, Super Eagles, go! Sing and sing and sing.